The Angry Chicken is a production of Amove TV. Bookmark amove.tv for more gaming and esports shows. The Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you via patreon.com/TAC.
Everyone, get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is the Angry Chicken.
Greetings, welcome back, and boy, do we have a bit to talk about this week. Goodness gracious me, I was not looking at my own Skype. Oh my god, Jocelyn is a unicorn, your argument is invalid. This is the Angry Chicken.
You can take the unicorn out of the Hearthstone year, but you can't take the unicorn out of the girl.
Clearly not. Clearly not.
Still the year of the unicorn to me, damn it.
Exactly.
Oh, I was not expecting that. That's amazing. I'm so glad that my Skype was completely covered up by all of the windows that I currently have open, and that I too was surprised by that. Hey everyone, I'm Garrett. She's a unicorn, and also joining us is Willie Dills Gregory for this episode of TAC. How is everyone doing? Jocelyn clearly in mourning, I see. Is this your unicorn?
Joss is still sad about the Year of the Mammoth,
I am so sad.
I'm just sad about the state of current Hearthstone right now. I played yesterday to get my Golden Shaman. I started at 491 wins, and like 30 games later, finally got my 500th. It was crazy. I was trying to play like mid-range Jade Shaman, and it was just pirates, more pirates, pirates with this class, pirates with that class, and Hearthstone was not fun yesterday. So, and then I caved and switched to aggro, and then immediately it was like, oh, it's turn 6. Let's see if he has Reno. Oh, he does. And it was just, I don't know. It was the most frustrating experience. It just felt like the game right now is just all about who drew better, and the decision making starts to feel less and less important, right? When it doesn't really matter because they just drew the stuff they needed. So it was rough. It was rough.
Yeah. I feel you there, man. I'm in a very similar boat. But I didn't want to start this episode off on a downer like that. All the crap that just got announced. My goodness.
No, we started with a unicorn, right? So
yeah. Well, it was two downers. We got Jocelyn in her unicorn funeral garb. We've got Dills lamenting the state of current Hearthstone. And the hard part is that I agree. I'll get over it not being the year of unicorn, but I am definitely sad with the current meta.
It feels almost though like I should step away until this nerf happens, right? And
I
don't want to.
A little bit.
I like Hearthstone.
Yeah.
So.
At least the nerf's gonna come in a week, right? So, I mean, you won't have to step away for that long.
Yeah. I mean, we're close to what we have one more preliminary to go, and then that should be safe to make some changes. So
yeah. I mean, you've got your gold shaman now, right? You don't have to play the shaman, so stop playing the shaman.
Yeah,
play something you like.
Shaman's golden, so I'll never play it again. Which I guess that's what I should be taking away from getting golden shaman. Like I never have to touch this class again. I think that's not supposed to be how it works. You're supposed to be happy that you have golden totems now, but I was just like, check that off the list. Not picking up that class again. I literally, after I got 500, I went into my collection and deleted every shaman deck. I had 3 of them made during the run.
That's great.
Well, that's how it feels, right? Once I got my 500 hunter wins, I haven't played that class at all because I'm just now it feels like I'm wasting my time because I should be grinding games on my other classes, not paladin though. So I feel like I should be spending my time trying to get, my last, I think 75 wins on mage and, my last few wins on warlock. And I'm just
And your last 500 wins on rogue.
Well, I'm almost at 100 rogue wins, okay? I'm doing it. Yeah,
you're making quite okay. All right, that's pretty good.
You can't give Joss crap either. I think I had 5 rogue wins when we started doing Miracle Rogue a month ago or 2 months ago. It was around Christmas because I came on for the 12 Days of Christmas, and that's when we did the Miracle Rogue. First Miracle Rogue playthrough. And I'm almost up to 100 wins in that short amount of span with my rogue. I just stayed away from it. I typically only play 2 or 3 classes a lot at a time. And there are some classes like Rogue and Druid and Mage that I have just pretty much ignored for the entire existence of Hearthstone. I don't like them for the most part. I like Rogue a lot now. I'm curious to see if that'll still be the case once Small Time Buccaneer isn't as good as he is. Probably though, I think he'll still be all right.
How about once Conceal goes to Wild?
Once Conceal goes to Wild, that's the one I'm the most concerned about. More on that in a second, but yeah, at the moment, really enjoying Rogue. But like,
we haven't talked about that on the show yet.
No,
I feel like this is such old news, but it happened. Yeah, this
Thursday.
Happened after
5
the last
days
show,
ago.
which also had a bunch of news. Wow, this is crazy.
Yeah, it happened.
The news cycle of Hearthstone is insane right now.
It's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty damn absurd. Before we get into it, I do want to give a shout out to all of the players from our Orlando HCT Fireside over the weekend, specifically the one HCT player, Vank Squisher, who, my God, the bad beats, guys, they are real. Dirty Rat needs to die. I wasn't even playing these games, and I hate this card with like a vindictive vengeance now. I hate it.
So I like Dirty Rat because it's an interesting counter card, but it is one of the most frustrating cards. Like right now, we've got some cards that are very frustrating because like patches, it's like either you draw it and you're like no, or the other guy plays the thing, gets the patches, you're like no. So there's like no like happy feelings around that card. And Dirty Rat is like kind of a similar thing, except at least the guy who played it and like got Reno or something like felt cool, right? Like if you time it just right. But yeah, it is one of those cards that makes, like, similar like Yogg, like people just get their hopes and dreams crushed by it sometimes.
To me, it's very similar to the Yogg effect because it's just like.
But you want to have combo cards, and then you want to have counters to combos, right? So, like, I like that there is a counter to combos, but it's not really countering combos right now. It's like literally just countering like the most important card in your deck, right?
It just completely ruins your chances of winning. Like if the auctioneer comes out against a Miracle Rogue and you have a way to remove it, unless they top deck their second auctioneer, you're dead. Like you could have the God Hand. You're like, yes, all spells, an auctioneer, and a couple other minions because he might have Dirty Rat. And it's like, you could have 3 minions in hand, a bunch of spells, and you're about to go into turn 6, and it's like beautiful. They Dirty Rat 1 and 3. They flip the catches in auctioneer, hits the board, and your dreams are just crushed. I'm feeling a little Yoggy towards Mr. Dirty Rat right now, personally. That's just from watching it destroy hopes and dreams over the course of 3 days.
I really enjoyed this last preliminary, by the way. I thought
it was much better.
It ran much smoother.
I
got to give Blizz credit. They fixed some of the gaffes in the last production, and maybe the Fireside gathering places that they had set up were running smoother as well or something. Maybe those were more vetted or something, but it all seemed to go pretty well. I'm sure it was a long day for you guys though, huh? You had to play what, 7 games or something like that?
There were 7 rounds. I mean, our players were out before the end for the most part. Like they had accrued enough losses that it was like they were for sure not going to move on, sadly.
Yeah, you basically had to be at least 5-2, I think.
Yeah, so. But we had to keep the Fireside running because it's also a public Fireside in addition to hosting some of the players. So yeah, it was still a long day. Still a long day. I actually got quite a bit of practice in with the mid-range Jade Shaman. It did really well for me that day. I was playing a lot of players around the Fireside who have reached levels in Hearthstone much higher than I ever have, and I was kicking trash with that mid-range Shaman. It felt good. But
it is a good deck. It's just I was just getting run over by pirates.
No, I have too. I've since taken like right before the show. I was like, oh, take some mid-range Shaman out on the ladder, and it was doing really well. In my very last game, 5 minutes before we went live, I just got punched in the teeth 5 times by a warrior that just played on curve and never did anything other but face, and he just got there. He just got there.
Yep. I'll tell you too. Right now, the most frustrating thing is having Maelstrom Portal in your hand, knowing that soon Small Time Buccaneer will have 1 health, and also knowing that, but today I can't kill it. You're like, soon I will be able to kill you. Today is not that day.
And I know you invoked that for humor's sake, but that actually plays really well with what Ben Brode has said in the past when he talks about timing of announcements, like that they don't want to announce things too far in advance for that very reason. Because if you know a nerf is coming, and you're like right now, me, Shaman play with that Maelstrom Portal, you're just like, Just wait till that nerf, you SOB. I'm going to kill the living crap out of that 2-1 when he becomes a 2-1, but right now I'm praying for Blood Mage. So, fun stuff. Anyways, there's quite a bit of Hearthstone news to dissect. Let's get into it.
Good news, everyone!
Hearthstone news this week is brought to you by our sponsor, Uniregistry. You can go to uniregistry.com to get your domains, any type you would like. Might we recommend, if we want to double up on our sponsors, a .game domain. I mean, just saying, it's a possibility. All three of us here have, I think we've purchased a domain or two in our lifetime, which means I'm sure we've also experienced annoying add-ons and website companies asking us if we would like fries with our domain as they pile in additions we do not need into our cart, and that doesn't happen over at Uniregistry.
Yeah, I've found in the past that the sites I use to buy website domains are also like the worst sites to use. So anything that makes that experience better, I'm all for, man.
It's like a virtual example of a guy with a trench coat asking you if you want to buy a watch. Like, that's been my experience with most domain name sellers.
I find, too, a lot of the add-ons are really confusing. It's like, I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, I think that sounds like something I might need. Technical website things. So I'm glad that there's a place I can go where it just doesn't offer me anything other than the thing that I know that I need, which is a place for people to go to find my stuff.
Well, fantastic. Well, you should definitely check out uniregistry.com then, and we thank them for their support. And as already mentioned, and if you're listening to this, you probably already know, but we're going to talk about it now. The Year of the Mammoth is coming, not the Year of the Unicorn, not the year of, I believe, a crocodile silhouette was one of the other animals seen on that wheel last year when we first saw our first standard rotation. But it's going to be the Year of the Mammoth. To reiterate, because we still get asked this question, Blackrock Mountain, the Grand Tournament, and League of Explorers are all going to Wild once the next standard rotation takes place. Now, if you were reading the headline, if you're reading the first few paragraphs, it didn't seem like very big news. It was like, okay, they're just announcing the name of the next standard year, but we also found out about what they are referring to as the Hall of Fame. And this is where, quote-unquote, problematic classic set cards will be going to become Wild only, essentially. I can only assume that they're going to get a little different watermark behind the text on the card. To coincide with the Hall of Fame. And there are a few classic or basic cards that are no longer going to be playable in Standard once the Year of the Mammoth gets here. And let's have our reactions, I guess, as we go down the list. So first up is Azure Drake. How do we feel about the almost auto-include 5-drop for many, many classes becoming Wild only?
I think this one's good. Like,
this card is not a problem, right? And that's not the reason it's going away. It's not like this overpowered card, but what it does do is it sets a power level for 5-drops that then must be reached or gone past for every subsequent 5-drop they put out, or else it will never see play, right? So basically, this is just like a design limiting card because, they put out some kind of cool, like Burgly Bully. It's a cool card, right? But you're like, well, I have 2 Azure Drakes. Can I really afford to also play like another 5-drop? And most of the time the answer is no. And so new cards just don't see play because they're just not as good as Azure Drake. And Azure Drake it's just kind of one of those cards. It goes in almost any deck because even if you don't run that many spells, it still cycles and it's still a 4/4 and it's like, it's still just a decent card. So, it's a card that just kind of, it just makes other cards worse, right? It's not that it's a problem. It makes other cards worse. I think we're kind of seeing that theme with a lot of these Hall of Fame cards.
Well, and we just
they're not
had
problems on their own. They're just making other cards worse.
And we just had the live developer insights an hour before we started recording, and there, like between Ben Brode and Mike Dene, there was a lot of language used. Like there's a lot of emphasis put on the difference between when a nerf is called for and when moving something to Wild is called for, and the difference seemed to really be if it is overpowered, they're probably going to nerf it. If it is included in a substantial amount of the population of decks in all of Hearthstone, then it's probably going to move to Wild. And that's exactly what's happening here with Azure Drake. Yeah, like you said, Dills, it's not overpowered. It's just in everyone's deck for the most part.
Sure. And when
Well,
you
that's the
have
thing,
like
and they-
Sludge Belcher as an option, maybe you'll choose that. But you don't in Standard, so you choose Azure Drake.
Well, and that's the other thing they touched on in the Q&A is really pertaining to all three of these first cards here, Azure Drake, Sylvanas, and Rag, is that they are not necessarily looking at moving some of the lower power or like the lower mana cost cards, specifically because there's just, usually more slots in your deck for lower cost cards. But when you're looking at the 5 to 8, 9, 10 mana cost cards, like you might only be running 4 or 5 of those in your deck total if you're playing a late game control style deck. So, these cards were becoming auto include and taking up all those spaces. And so new cards weren't being looked at all to fill those slots in decks. So they just needed to move them out to make room for some more design space, really, in those higher cost cards.
Yeah, and forever, every time you make a 5-drop, you're always going to think, well, will this replace Azure Drake? Like, is this going to go in my deck, or is it going to be Azure Drake? And that just shouldn't be. There shouldn't be a card that exists forever that always makes you ask that question. Like, it's fine for them to put in a set. Like, if Azure Drake was a grand tournament card, it'd be like, whatever, it's fine, it's going away soon. But it's a classic card; it's never going away. So it needs to be moved into Wild. I think I really like this decision.
Yeah. The next is Sylvanas Windrunner. The Banshee Queen will be soon Wild only. I'm not
this card, man.
I'm not surprised by this at all.
It's like it's been this was one of the ones where they nerfed it and it was like, it's still really good. This card used to cost 5, and even at 6, it's really good. I do like this though, because one thing about Sylvanas is that the mechanic that she does kind of feel like a Wild mechanic, like this kind of really broken thing that's just really cool, but kind of OP and feels out of place within the rest of what Standard kind of is, which Standard should feel like you're working with a limited amount of power and you're trying to figure out how to make a good deck with these kind of limited tools. And then Sylvanas is just like this insanely awesome card that then goes into that and feels kind of out of place. So I like it. She feels like a Wild card to me. Like a card that can do really broken stuff, and when they put out new Death Rattle stuff, you'll always come back to Sylvanas as like, ooh, how's this going to work with Sylvanas? And that'll happen in Wild, not in Standard. So,
yeah, I call Jocelyn Sylvanas. Jocelyn, any parting words for, I believe, one of your all-time favorite Warcraft characters?
Yeah, Sylvanas is pretty much like my all-time favorite character. But I think what I'm most excited for is that I think that Wild is going to be significantly better after this rotation, after things like Sylvanas go into the Hall of Fame and everything rotates out into Wild. I think that the format's going to shine. So I think I'll go there to play more, and her being over there is a reason for me to go play there. So I 100% agree with Dills. I think that her effect is the kind of effect that you want to see more of in Wild and maybe less of in Standard, because I mean the big game swingy shifts that have to do with randomness, often in a very competitive way, don't feel good. So I think that it's probably good that both she and Rag are moving, and I think it's because of that specific thing, and it's going to make me play Wild because those things I think are their fun effects. And I want to see my fun swingy effects in Wild. I don't necessarily want to see my fun swingy effects in Standard.
Or in tournaments, right? Like you don't want to watch a tournament
exactly.
and just be like, well, that guy's Rag was amazing. And we've seen that happen in the past.
Yeah.
And Sylvanas is the same thing. Like there's a lot of times where, you'll do like a Sylvanas Shadow Flame, and then there's a 50-50 where you're going to take like their Ragnaros or something like that, and then that Rag starts to hit others, and it just gets ridiculous. And you're like, I wanted to watch people make really important decisions, not flip a coin really well. That's what I wanted to watch with my competitive Hearthstone. So, yeah, that's another really good point, is that it's going to make these two cards in particular, Ragnaros and Sylvanas, are two like huge swing cards, right? And it's going to take that out of your Standard competitive play.
Yeah.
And I think if they make Wild competitive, which they say they're going to do, I don't mind it being a little bit more around controlling RNG, winning big flips, big swingy turns, because there's going to be so many decks that are like just super synergized, right? That and then somebody might bring a deck that's just like, well, I win flips with this deck, and that's how I do it. And that kind of stuff is fun, right? So it'll be cool there.
Yeah. Joss, I really like the point you brought up that certain cards like Rag, like Sylvanas, being exclusive to Wild is an attraction point for Wild. And now I just want a Disney park. That's all the rides that they've gotten rid of. Now I want that.
They've unnerfed all the old rides and
Yeah.
they've brought them back.
Yeah. Yeah. Next door, you can find Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. You don't have to go to California anymore, Orlando residents. Power overwhelm. We already talked about Rag, so I think we can just move. It's a big deal that he'll no longer be in standard, but I think both.
By the way,
Jocelyn,
these two cards too fall in the same category of Azure Drake, where they also set a power level for 6 drops and 8 drop legendaries, right?
Right.
So why would you ever play like all you can create all these cool new big legendaries, and you're like, well, but Rag is better, so I'm just gonna play Rag, and it exists forever. So forever you'll have to deal with that, and it's just better to just nix that now. Just Rags and Wild. Let's make some cool stuff. People will play it now.
Yeah. Power overwhelming is also going to Wild, which this came up in the dev insights as to why they were doing this, and Mike Dene spoke very heavily to basically the overall power level of Warlocks, that they have a lot of burst potential. Even invoking things like Leroy Jenkins, he's had a home in Warlock decks for a while now. I got the hint that maybe Leroy Jenkins was considered for the Hall of Fame at some point, maybe, possibly, when he was talking about it. But yeah, this is I'm filing Power Overwhelming in with Conceal, which we haven't talked about yet, as the ones that probably surprised me the most here.
I'm not surprised by these. I think the issue, because Power Overwhelming, Ice Lance, those are not overpowered cards, right? They require other things to make them work. Like you have to have a minion on board to make Power Overwhelming really good, right? You have to draw Leroy, Power Overwhelming, and Faceless Manipulator, and then get Thorison ticks on some of those cards to make that work, right? So it's not like they're on their own in a vacuum overpowered, but what they do is they make it so that forever and ever, as the entire existence of this game, if these are the cards that exist in Classic Set, there will always be combos that use Power Overwhelming. Like, we'll be 5 years from now watching people Power Overwhelming Faceless manipulate stuff in Warlock, unless we move that card into Wild, right? Because it's just the best combo tool you have available, and it's one that's always going to be there. So what I'm hoping is that with these cards, they're not removing burst combos from the game. A lot of people have complained, like, oh man, they're removing burst combos. And I love combo decks. What I hope is that it's not that they're removing those. What I'm hoping is that they're paving the way for new combo tools that aren't just permanent, right? So the new set will have something else to allow you to combo things, and not just this card that always exists in Classic. So there will always be Freeze Mage. There will always be Combo Warlock. Now there will be periods where some sort of Combo Mage is a viable thing, and then it'll go away, and some other new combo thing will come out. That's what I'm hoping for. So yeah, these cards are not a problem on their own. They're just like forever tools for combo decks,
and
right?
then you
should have those kind of rotate in and out.
And they limit the design space, right? You have to constantly be worried about what minions you put in that Warlocks have access to because of Power Overwhelming.
Yeah. It's you're right. Like, you might want to put in really cool cards, and then you're like, but how is this going to work with Power Overwhelming, right? I guess we can't make it, and that's not cool either. So yeah, it opens up the space, and then Conceal does to me again. That's the card I look at and I go, that is a broken mechanic. Being able to and that might be preventing them from making really cool questing adventure style cards. Like Red Mana Worm was a really cool thing, but maybe they wanted to make that even cooler, but they were like, wow, with Conceal, we definitely can't do that. So it opens up design space there, but also Conceal to me does feel like a Wild mechanic. Like, it feels like something, like I could do some crazy stuff in Wild because I can conceal all this stuff, and in Standard it just seems a little bit awkward that someone could just make a giant board and then conceal it, and you're like, oh, well, interaction over, So yeah, I'm with all of these. I think they're all fine. They open up design space. They make it so that things will shift in and out, and these things won't just be here forever.
I think Conceal more than any of the others is the one that probably makes me raise an eyebrow the most, just because of the trials and tribulations of Rogue in the last year. It feels like it's finally finding its footing again. And here we are with another standard rotation with like a Rogue card that I feel no one was talking about getting moved. Or last year it didn't get moved, but Blade Flurry got changed to the point where it was basically unplayable. And if you rewind a year ago, we were saying, well, let's give them a chance. I'm sure they'll put something in where we'll be like, now we see why Blade Flurry was nerfed, and that never happened. So I'm a little skeptical of the Conceal choice here.
Yeah, but my thing is, I don't feel like to me, like the Rogue thing is combo, and like combo is not the Rogue thing anymore, right? Now it's something else. It's literally just this cycling of cards with gadgets in is the Rogue thing, and that, I don't know, that shouldn't be their thing. They should go back to being like a stabby class with combo cards. And like they just don't, like they don't even play SI7 agents anymore in a lot of these decks, right? It's just really weird that it's kind of gone to this place where it's just what Rogue now tries to do is cheese out like a degenerate win with Conceals and Edwin Van Cleefs, right? And Questing Adventures. And it never used to be that. It's just morphed into this thing. And I want them to be the weapon, like the second weapon class that buffs its dagger and does cool things. And I hope we get back to that at some point. But obviously concealing and WoW, being stealthy as a rogue is a thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the card itself concealing your entire board, I think is maybe where the issue comes into play. Because it makes it so, like you could play like Shadow Rager and stuff like that, and you're still like a concealy type thing. But being able to then use other cards that shouldn't have ever been concealed and then concealing them is, I think, the issue, right? Like you put conceal on a card, it's like charge. Like charge was able to give minions that should never have charge, right? So suddenly you're charging 8/8s and stuff. And I think that's why they were like, yeah, never mind, that shouldn't happen.
What are you talking about, man? You don't think massive giants the size of mountains should be able to run really fast?
It's just like questings and stuff aren't supposed to be concealed anymore. Like they got rid of conceal on or stealth on Edwin Van Cleef, and then rogues are like, no, it still has stealth. We just do it after the fact.
Listen, if we're talking like thematically, like, and making Rogue feel like Rogue, I agree with you there. Like, if I think they should have stealth, but it shouldn't be like stealth on massive minions. It should be, you should be killing. Yeah. In my mind, Rogue should be succeeding, and also keeping with a theme in a bunch of little minions attacking over the course of multiple turns that maybe have stealth, and maybe they have you find a way to keep giving them stealth so that they actually survive. That feels roguey to me.
Think about this in the way that we thought about like Warsong Commander. Like Warsong Commander made it so that they had to make Dreadsteed a Warlock card, right? Because they were like, we can't allow Warrior to have this card, and they wanted it to be a neutral card. Conceal, I'm sure, is limiting design because they're like, how can we make this card if rogues will be able to conceal it, right? It's there could be really cool overpowered cards in Hearthstone because of how it works, right? I was talking to a buddy of mine who plays a lot of Hex about this the other day, where in Hex, if you had a card like Ragnaros in Hex or in Magic, right, where it just sat there and just shot all your stuff, and then you're like, well, I just never attack with it, and you can't kill it unless you literally have hard removal. Like, you can't make a card like that in those types of games, but in Hearthstone you can, because I can at least run a bunch of dudes into it, right, and kill it that way. So you can make these really overpowered cards because of the back and forth nature of Hearthstone. Cards they're not really permanent in the same way they are in a game like Magic or Hex. But when you have a card like Conceal, you can then, like, you suddenly can't make those cards, right? Because suddenly now you take away that interaction. So, like if you could conceal a card like Archmage Antonidas, it would be disgusting. So
yeah, I'll get that.
So I'm with this. It allows them to make more neutral cards that are really cool, right?
All I want to do is go off on a tangent about Ragnaros in other card games, but it's not here nor there.
But like if you had a card in Magic that sat there just every turn, you were like, all right, it kills one of your cards.
All right,
at the end of every turn.
F it.
And you can't do anything because I'm never going to attack with it.
I can't hold it in. I'm going to go there real quick, and I'm going to say I disagree slightly. I think it's almost like a rubber band there. There's an ebb and flow to it. Because if you think about in Hearthstone, cards like Assassinate, like hard target removal, they are not high valued because you can run minions into other minions. You can target other minions. Whereas I think Ragnaros could find something like Ragnaros could find a place in Magic because they have hard removal, and hard removal is already considered a high value card that you would already consider including in your deck already, like as it is. So because targeted removal exists, that would be okay.
Targeted removal becomes much more valuable for sure.
Exactly. So, anyways, sorry, it was bubbling up inside, like pushing up my nerd glasses and wanting to get in on this little like random aside that had nothing to do with Hearthstone. I apologize, but overall, like I said, I'm on board with all of these. I'm just skeptical of Rogue because I feel like we got burned in the past with Blade Flurry. So they impressed me, Team 5.
Yeah, I think that this kind of does open up the design space a little bit with Rogue, and I think it allows them to get back to like really powerful combo things. And I'm excited to see what they have coming. And I think they actually talked in the Q&A about Blade Flurry a little bit, basically just saying like, guys, hitting face was too freaking powerful. Like we couldn't design around that, and that's why it got nerfed. So I think that we just need to wait and see a little bit with what's coming out in the next expansion, and hope that now that they've gotten rid of some of these cards, like they are able to give us things that they've been holding on to for a while. I think, it's definitely a wait and see. And again, like these cards aren't gone. You can still do crazy, big, huge, awesome concealing turns in Wild. I think it's just it's a wait and see kind of thing.
Yeah, I really hate that people still just use that term, and I use it too sometimes. Where I just say, it's going away. It's not going away. It's going to Wild.
It's moving to Wild.
Rotating to Wild.
It is moving to all my concerns are directed specifically at Standard Rogue. That's
But the other thing too is like I watch people do this too. People are making all sorts of like hard, like they're speaking as if these are hard facts. Like Rogue is gonna suck. And you're like, dude, you haven't seen the 130 new cards that are coming. So don't say anything. You cannot. You're literally like wrong to ever say like a definitive statement about the future of any class based on these changes that are happening now.
Yeah, because
they're not. First of all, these changes aren't happening now. They're happening at the same time that 130 new cards are coming out. So
yes, despite the fact that their diagram is mad confusing.
Sure. That's a definitive fact we could say.
Yes.
That the graphic listed on the website announcing all of this, it makes no sense. Yes. Well,
I won't get into it. I went into a rant before we went live with the show. I won't get into it again.
I'll get into it in case anyone is curious. The little graphic that shows the schedule of which all this is happening shows Year of the Mammoth happening in Q1 and the first expansion happening in Q2. All of this is supposed to be happening simultaneously, which has been confirmed. So who designed that? It makes no sense.
Yep, I was really, really confused. Even in the blog post, there is a video showing basically the exact opposite thing, like confirming what we've always been told, that the rotation is happening at the same time as the standard year is changing, all the rest of it. We're getting the expansion. That's all happening at the same time. And there's a video that confirms that. And then later on in the same blog post, there's a graphic that shows them happening in different quarters, which if you guys aren't aware, quarters are sets of 3 months, which means we would have had a standard rotation. And then like 3 months later, we would have had an expansion. So Blizzard,
what's going on?
Fix your poop.
Get your stuff together, guys. Get your poop together. Gather it all up, take it to the poop store, get it together. If as usual, I lose my stuff over inconsistency. I lose it hard. So, anyways, there's also a PSA that goes along with these Hall of Fame cards, which is do not disenchant them. Just don't. Don't do it. It doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about it. We will be receiving the full dust value for each of these cards up to the maximum number of the Hall of Fame cards that can be put in a deck. So we get the dust and the cards, the full amount. And this goes for a regular version of a card or a golden version of the card. So if you currently have a golden Ragnaros, you will get 3,200 dust when this change occurs live in the game with the new standard rotation coming in.
And you will not get double dust, just so everybody knows, because I've heard people talking about, I should, craft blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, just understand, if you have regular rag and you craft golden rag, you will get 3,200. You will not get 32 and 16.
Correct.
Right? So,
however,
you can. I mean, you could disenchant your regular one, craft a golden one, and you'll get 3,200 dust back.
That's actually exactly what I did. today. I've been teetering on buying some more Mean Streets of Gadgetzans packs. There's not any cards I'm particularly missing, but I am missing quite a few legendary. So once this came in, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy another big fat stack, get myself a bunch of dust. I'm going to craft a golden rag, a golden Sylvanas. I'm going to disenchant my regular Sylvanas, my regular Ragnaros, and I'm going to go usher into Wild with some sweet swag.
And you'll get a bunch of dust all at once when that happens. So you'll be able to start crafting some new stuff.
Yep. So
I'm definitely doing it too. I have golden Azure Drakes, and I think I have golden however Whelmings and Ice Lances. So I'll get a bunch of dust for that. But yeah, Ragnaros and Sylvanas, I need to actually do some work. So.
Yep.
And
so,
I think I don't have enough dust right now to craft a single one. So I'm also gonna have to do what you did, which is purchase some packs. Luckily, I have about 5,000 gold, so I'll spend that.
Yeah. Also, when I opened my mad stack of Mean Streets of Gadgetzan packs, I got a ton of Small Time Buccaneers, so I ain't disenchanting those suckers yet. Holding on to them.
Oh, hell yeah. There you go. That's a really good point, too. That and, you can't get Spirit Claws. But yeah, Buccaneers.
Yeah, I believe I currently have 5 extras. I think I have 7
How do
sitting
you
in my
feel
collection.
about the fact that they're not giving patches dust refunds?
Whatever. People need to calm down.
I'm with you there, but it is an interesting point. Like, they could have said, I wouldn't have put it past them to say, okay, we're also giving patches.
I get it, but that would also be admitting that pirates are going to be crap after the Small Time Buccaneer change, and I
don't think they will be.
Yeah,
I don't think they will be either.
I don't necessarily think that. I don't necessarily think that. There's no way of knowing. Again, more cards are okay. I guess that change is happening before the cards are coming in.
That's a week from now.
But still, there's a new expansion on the horizon. Who knows what's happening with pirates?
I think it's just going to be warriors are still going to be playing pirates, and then some of the other classes are just not going to use that pirate package anymore.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think.
But patches itself is still fine, right? His use case goes from a whole bunch of different classes and a whole bunch of different decks to more specific classes and decks. But I think that's the use case they always intended it for.
They always wanted him to be. Yeah.
So
he might
I
become
think
more of a combo card, right? Like they thought maybe he was going to be instead of just an
with
auto.
gang up. Yeah.
Yep. No.
See, pirates, they're everywhere, man. Like, we're talking about this new stuff, and pirates just happen. We can't get them away.
Yeah, I crafted patches. I don't care that I'm not getting my patches refunded because I'm probably still going to have a pirate warrior.
Yeah.
So, the other big thing that came to light as a result of this blog post is that adventures are going away. Sort of. We're getting 3 130 card expansions a year. Last year was 1 expansion with a ton of cards, 1 adventure with not a ton of cards, and 1 expansion with a ton of cards. This is just going to be 3 tons of cards expansions, if I'm using my own terminology. So, the cool thing about this, though, is we are getting single-player storytelling missions, like adventure-like content. I'm sure some boss fights that will be coming. They're going to be free additional single-player pieces of content. It's not going to happen with the first expansion of this year, though. They said, they didn't say it as much, but I am inferring from this that, hey, we plan these things way in advance. So this decision was made before, like after the next expansion was just too far along to plan for this adventure-like content to be coming in with it. So the second expansion of 2017 will bring with it single-player content for free, which I think is really cool.
And with rewards, which is something that wasn't in the blog post but was clarified today in the Q&A, is that they will be giving packs out as rewards, and they have also basically said that they drastically increased the number of packs that they were giving out for free with, quest rewards and all the rest of it. So they are going to be rewarding players for taking part in free single player content. So I think that that's really great for the game. And I'm glad that they actually confirmed that, because a lot of people were very upset that adventures were going away, because it was essentially a set of cards that they knew that they could get for sure.
All right, so I'm going to address those people because they need to shut up.
Oh, whoa. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah, no,
Doing
you
the
can
SmackDown?
send me your emails. You can send them. Don't send them to TAC. I'm sure Garrett and Joss are not going to share my harsh tone here.
This is exactly what this is actually just before you get going, Dills. This is what the email is about today. So
okay.
I'm going to gray out the email because we're going to talk about it right now. But
sure.
Lance in our emails had basically exactly the same.
Let me
People,
just. Is it okay if we read it so at least we give Lance's?
Yeah, let's read the email
sure.
now.
All right.
All right, Dills, we're gonna put a face to the person you're telling to shut up.
This is the person. We can now direct this individual to shut up. All right.
The verbiage of Willie Dills Gregory does not necessarily represent that of the Angry Chicken as a whole. Lance writes in and says, "Hello, everyone. I listen to your show every week, but this is my first email to a podcast. I'm concerned with the new format for Hearthstone. I think they are going to lose a lot of casual players with the new 3 expansions of 130 cards each year. I like the small set of cards they put in the adventure because at least I got all the cards. Over time, I could still work on getting the bigger expansions completed. Now, to get every card, it's going to cost $600 a year, which is a bit much for casual players. That's my rant for today. I would very much like to know what you guys have to say about my thoughts." Clearly, Dills has very strong thoughts. I have strong thoughts too, but I would be a little softer with it.
All right, so
I
Lance, the nicest possible way.
Yeah, I want to hear what Jill says first.
Here's the issue. Yes, you are guaranteed 45 cards. I get it. I understand your side of it. You're guaranteed 45 cards. You know you're going to get these legendaries. The issue is that those guaranteed 45 cards end up impacting the meta in such a small way that the game is worse for it. So because the special little person who wants their 45 guaranteed cards gets your whatever, the rest of the player base has to deal with a meta that shifts very little, right? So we all can't get everything we want. But the bigger part of the player base wants a game that's shifting consistently and in drastic ways every single time, right? And that is healthier for a card game overall than guaranteeing somebody gets a few legendaries, right? And I play free-to-play accounts, so I understand the feeling of trying to build collections in free-to-play accounts. And it is nigh impossible to build a collection of free-to-play cards when adventures exist, right? Because you have to buy wings to get certain cards, and the wings cost 700, and you have to like earn that much, and then that takes away from your ability to buy packs. That takes away from your ability to play arena, and so building those collections becomes a huge chore when you can't. And now, like, this could all be fixed just by allowing me to enchant current adventure cards, which I know you can like disenchant them if you've bought the wings and stuff like that. But if you haven't, you can't get them, right? They're just like cards I can't have. So I can't play Tempo Mage, even though I have all the other Tempo Mage cards, because I don't have Flame Waker, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way for me to get it is to buy the damn wing, right? And 700 gold.
Well, and even then, it's not even only 700 gold in a lot of cases, because you can't unlock
for it.
Yeah, you can't unlock one specific wing. Like if the card that I want is in wing 3 of an adventure, then all of a sudden that one card is, 2100 gold because I have to buy 3 wings to get it.
Yeah. But so the issue here is that while yes, you are guaranteed these cards, the drawback of adventures is not worth it, right? The drawback of a meta that shifts very little isn't worth it. The drawback of free-to-play players not being able to get specific cards that actually are very important is not worth it. So the fact that now they'll come in packs actually opens up the ability to earn cards free-to-play. And also, if they're upping the amount of packs you're getting, you might end up finding that you're spending less money. And $20, sure, it's not that much, but you're not getting as much as you think for that $20. You're getting a bunch of cards that don't do much. The decks don't change. You still have to have a bunch of other stuff to then fit these cards in. And so you're just basically shoehorning those cards into existing decks that you may or may not have the cards for anyway. So it really just, like, the pluses do not equal the minuses for adventures. And a card game suffers greatly when metas don't shift.
Dills,
Unicorn going back on.
Could you
so
make...
there you go. So
Dills, can I get one concession out of you to at least stem the flow of emails into the inbox?
Sure.
I would like you to concede that not all adventures are created equal, and some have had quite large impacts on the game versus others.
Naxxramas.
And League of Explorers.
League of Explorers had like 3 cards that really did it. But you could have put those cards out in an expansion and had a bigger impact, right? You could have put those cards out with 130 cards and had, like, you weren't, like, the fact that those cards had a big impact and the fact that they were an adventure are not tied together, right? Just the fact, just that those cards were put out is what made that happen. So it's not like you needed them to also be part of an adventure. it still sucked that we only got 45 cards, right? Like I would have much rather had 130 new cards. So.
Well, and I think, too, the point should be made that you don't have to get all 130 cards. I don't think that I actually have all cards from every expansion ever. Like, even if you take legendaries out of the mix, like, there are a certain number of cards that are going to go in decks that you want to build, that are going to impact the meta, and that are going to be powerful, that you're going to want. But that's not 130 cards. There's bad cards every single expansion that you can then either dust or, just, like, you don't need to craft them. So I think that, saying that now you're going to have to, somehow come up with 390 cards over the course of a year, that's not really realistic either.
You don't need those cards.
You don't need every single card from every single expansion. You can, make a deck or two, and that's always going to be the drawback of being a free-to-play player. And I think Bro talked about it today as well, saying, totally free-to-play players are still able, by putting the time in, to compete at the legend rank. And if that's still the case, then they're able to be competitive, and you just have to either basically put the time into the game or the money into the game. And as long as by putting time in you can still compete at a high level, they're okay with that.
Yeah, people somehow want to be free to play and also just have all the cards, and it's just like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. You don't get to have everything for free in in a game that costs money. If you want, you can have everything, just going to cost a little money or a bunch of time. That's you don't just get,
that's the trade-off,
everything you want. So again, it's maybe it sounds harsh when I'm saying it like this, but people, I read these comments and I'm just like, who are these entitled people who just think that everything should be handed to them and that everything should just be super easy? How did we get to this place where people just think that's how it should work? Blizzard needs to make money. And also, people who play the game a lot are going to leave if the game is not changing drastically. If it's not shifting in a big way every few months, eventually the game will just die out. And you will have your 45 cards, and congratulations. But you'll be playing dead game, right? And that's we don't want that. We want the game to be, vibrant, lively, lots of stuff happening. That's the healthiest way for this game to exist. So getting rid of adventures was a massive step in the right direction. I am so happy that Blizzard decided to do this. It's the best thing they could have done. That was, to me, out of all the announcements here, I was like, oh my God, thank you. Yes.
Well, and I think they also did it in a really good way, because I know a lot of people who do play Hearthstone very casually. My co-host on one of my other shows is one of them. And he comes back into Hearthstone every single time that an adventure comes out because he loves the free-to-play content. And so he goes in, plays the adventure, plays Heroic, and then doesn't play Hearthstone anymore until the next adventure. So now what they've done is they've given us that single-player content 3 times a year instead of one or possibly... No, actually, sorry, the way that it was working, it would have only been 1 time a year. So instead of only giving us single player content once a year, now we're getting it 3 times a year, and we're going to get packs on top of that too for rewards. So I feel like they've done it in a really great way. And it's also going to be, it kind of addresses, and they talked about this today in the Q&A, it addresses the player concern that adventures are too easy, because basically what Brode said is we had to make them easy because you're paying for specific cards in the wing as your reward. So we had to make sure that you could get the reward. That's why we made Heroic. So now the single player content, since it's free and optional, basically they're saying it's now we can make it more difficult. We can make it challenging. We can make it fun in that way.
Yeah, they said that
thought that it was way too easy.
Yeah, they said that there are currently no plans for a heroic version of the new single player content that will be coming, but that we should notice an uptick in the overall difficulty for the reasons you just mentioned.
Right, we don't need heroic mode because the existing single player content is going to be challenging.
Yeah. That being said, Mike Denay did not rule out heroic for the future.
Yeah, right. He brought it up.
Yeah. So, but
I just also want to point out too that if you are a free to play player and you spend 2,800 gold to open up all the wings in a thing, you could have bought 28 packs, which would have been 140 cards, which means you would probably get more than 45 cards. Yes, you wouldn't get 5 legendaries guaranteed. But legendaries aren't always the answer. I know they're the shinies, but they're not always the best cards in the set. So you actually are getting more bang for your buck if you're just buying things with gold.
Yeah.
It really just, in every way, I read these comments and I'm like, guys, you're just wrong. I'm sorry. You're making arguments based on feelings and not actual truth and how the game works. And it feels bad to think I'm never going to get an adventure again, but It's
I'm
not the case.
playing devil's advocate here, but I will say it is your opinion that a frequently shifting game is more fun than a stagnant game. I don't believe the words that are coming out of my mouth, but that is technically an opinion, Dills. It's not a fact. There are some people who would enjoy the game more if it was a very, very slow to shift meta. That being said, I agree with you, Dills, that I think the vast majority of engaged Hearthstone players that log in multiple times a week, would prefer a ever-changing meta. I can say for certain myself personally, if we went the route of more freebies, classic cards never changing, the game staying the same forever, I would quit playing. I would go and start playing a lot more Magic again.
The people who like the game to never change have tons of options. You can go play Candyland. You can go play checkers.
Jeez, Dills.
You can go play
come on.
Shoots and Ladders. The meta never changes in Shoots and Ladders,
Dills.
man.
Oh, Dills.
Chess. These are all options for you. Leave my Hearthstone alone. Let me have it change, please. All right?
Yeah.
You have your game. You have your Candyland.
Now, Dills.
You have Hungry Hungry Hippo. Give me my Hearthstone.
Now, Dills, where I would like to throw down, sir, is League of Explorers had more than 3 impactful cards. You're wrong.
Yeah, but
you're smoking crack.
Again, it didn't have to be an adventure to have those.
No, I'm not. That's not what I'm arguing.
Those cards,
but man, League of Explorers was a great
adventure.
adventure.
In an expansion and been just as impactful.
Yeah, no, but League of Explorers was a great freaking adventure with an ass ton, a technical term, an ass ton of impactful cards. So, anyways.
All right, I'm done being an asshole now.
All right, that's cool. All right. And I appreciate you letting me throw it back at you a little bit. So,
sure.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I am so freaking excited about this that it's ridiculous. We had to take a detour there into trying to see the other side of the argument, even though Dills led the charge to shut up. Yeah, if I can throw all that,
I love you, buddy. I'm so
if
sorry.
I can throw all that out, it's
if he's even still listening, he's
shut
probably
off
turned
the
it off
show.
by now.
He's thrown his iPad or his iPod on the ground.
Yeah.
He's done with podcasts forever.
Yeah, we
And
get
he's
one.
never gonna write in ever again. That was his first letter to a podcast ever.
We get one of the. We're allowed one of these every once in a while. I had one a couple episodes ago. Dills had his today. Jocelyn. I'm surprised you were as calm as you were about it not being the year of the unicorn. I was expecting you to have your.
She's holding the rage inside.
Yeah, I was so upset last Wednesday.
Canadian
There
style.
were a lot of posts with a lot of caps in them. Broad and I are no longer friends. There's some schisms that are occurring over the year of the mammoth. But I thought I'd keep it out of the show and just have my unicorn onesie and snuggle it a little and tell it everything will be okay.
Jocelyn lamenting the year of the mammoth being the announcement was actually how I found the blog post. I hadn't seen it yet. That was literally the first reaction I saw to it, which was Jocelyn just no. So that was fun. Thank you, Jocelyn. I had a very unique experience in seeing this announcement from, I think, the rest of the world. Anyways, moving on. There was a little more talk about Wild. They said that a Wild format Heroic Tavern Brawl is coming after the release of the next expansion. I am super freaking stoked about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just want Heroic Tavern Brawl back.
I do too.
So I can blow all my gold again.
Man, I was so happy to be so wrong. I was pouring the haterade on that thing when it was announced, and I ended up loving it. So bring it back now. And also that they will be collaborating with tournament organizers to promote Wild tournaments. So
word. Yeah,
I may have sent an all caps text to Amy, the organizer for our fireside, being like, "We need to get in on this."
By the way, I hope this is a step towards like an actual Wild championship.
Dills, words out of my mouth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about it on this show many times, but a lot of these things that they're doing feel like steps towards things we've always wanted, right? So.
Yeah, I think the thing about this that it's not necessarily a flag, but I kind of was hoping to see a little bit more, because basically what they're saying is that they're going to try to give more support to third parties doing Wild tournaments, and what I would kind of rather see is Blizzard to do their own Wild tournaments with the same level of production and fanfare and prize pools and all the rest of it as their current standard tournaments, and whether that's actually the form of like HCT or not. Like, even they announced, the Hearthstone Global Games. That's something really cool, and people are going to get behind their country and all the rest of it. It's not the kind of thing that's going to impact BlizzCon, or I guess not BlizzCon, HCT. So why not make it Wild? You know, like there's so much, there's community involvement, there's promotion, there's, you know, like it's going to be this big thing. If they were really serious about helping out Wild, I think that maybe a Blizz tournament would be the way to go.
Yeah, no, I want everything that just left your mouth. Like I want that, please. And there was a big emphasis by both Mike Dene and Ben Brode in the developer insight. There wasn't a lot. There's not a lot to say. I think like new in what they were talking about there, because they were it was mostly a recap of everything we're talking about here, and then some further clarification. But they had a really heavy emphasis on Wild and supporting Wild, and you know what is good for Standard versus what is good for Wild, and how do we make decisions that are good for both. And that excites me, because Wild excites me. I've been enjoying Wild the most I ever have since Mean Streets came out, and I'm very excited for like every expansion from here on out for both Standard and Wild, because Wild's pool just gets more ridiculous and Standard, you know, changes a bit. So bring it on, and also hopefully that means when we do a Wild tournament, maybe more of you will sign up.
Yeah, I mean it does make sense that this first year of rotation in Standard, Wild wasn't as exciting as it will be, and was, you know, like just kind of ignored a little bit. It makes sense because there wasn't enough of a change from Wild to Standard yet, right? Mm-hmm. There's 2 sets. That's it. And within those 2 sets,
one was
yes,
an
there are some
adventure.
powerful cards. Yeah, exactly. An expansion and an adventure. That's all that we're actually missing right now. And then as we go forward, that once that card pool is larger, then things are really going to start to happen. Like when you look at, you know, Magic the Gathering, you look at like Vintage, like that game is completely different than what Standard is, right? Because there's 20 years of cards, and Hearthstone just isn't there yet. But as time goes on, Wild will become more of a thing, and like at some point, you never know, it could shift into being, you know, as big as Standard, because in a lot of ways, people consider, you know, like Modern and stuff to be a preferred format in Magic, and even though Standard also exists right next to it, right? So it's time will only tell, but I'm glad that they're now starting to, like this is the correct timing. It makes sense that now they're going, okay, Wild needs to be a little bit more considered by us. Yeah. Because now all of a sudden there's a lot of sets there. So. Yep.
Other than that, there were a couple minor announcements in this. Was that we're getting a new rogue hero. Mayav Shadow Song is coming in. All we have to do is win 10 games of Hearthstone in either standard, ranked, or casual. If I could pick just one nit here, it would be Arena wins, please. Maybe let's add that in there. Give us something to unlock with Arena, please. Thank you. And then finally, our daily login rewards. They are coming to usher in the next expansion, which will be coming with them, I guess, Dust, Gold, and expansion packs as rewards for logging in.
Now
daily.
It's going to feel like a mobile game.
Yeah, finally.
Although
it is a mobile game.
Anything that helps free-to-play players continue to play the game and feel like they have catch-up mechanics, I think is a good thing, because there will always be like this group of people who are going to spend money. But what you need to do is you need to somehow find a way to convert some free-to-play players into players who spend money. And I really believe that the way to do that is have them catch up a little bit, where they go, man, I'm just missing a couple cards to make a really
I should
cool
go
deck.
buy 10 packs or something.
I should probably buy some packs. Exactly. And so you got to get them to that point, because if they're always so far behind they don't care, they'll never spend money, right? So, yeah, you get them close, and then they're like, I just need a little more, and that's how you get them. So. Go get them, Blizzard. Go get them. I'm all for it.
I was like, so is this Blizzard, you're doing the right thing, or is this like a warning PSA? Like, don't let them get you guys.
It really triggers me when people are like, oh, Blizzard's just greedy and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, bro, have you ever owned a business? Like, do you think everything's supposed to be free? It's like this weird mentality where everything on the internet should be free. And it's like, people have to make money, dude. People have homes, families, like, making money is part of this. So it's not being greedy, it's being a business.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The older you get, the more of those switches get flipped along the way.
Welcome to your 30s, Garrett. You gotta make money now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, yeah, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, yeah, I'd like to. how much is it going to add to my rent payment every month? Because that's how I weigh life now, is making sure I can pay the bills and, still enjoy life. So,
the game goes away if it doesn't make money. So
yeah,
don't think it's greed.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, so we had the live developer insights. What is there anything you guys would like to point out that really stuck out to you that we haven't already kind of talked about?
Ooh,
not really. I mean, I guess the new one thing that we talked about, Conceal going to Wild. One thing that makes me not worried about Rogue is they're getting a new hero. So I'm like, this stuff is planned for Rogue, man. Rogue is gonna be a playable class. I'm not worried about it.
They're losing actual functional cards, but they're getting a new hero, so don't worry, guys.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense that they get a new hero and then they suck, right? That's not going to happen.
What? You're crazy, man.
That's not going to happen. They're
it's
not
like
gonna suck.
Yeah, because we got Tyrande and Priest just took off.
Priest is fine now.
Yeah,
it's
Reno
fine,
Priest,
but it's
yeah.
No.
I'm about to play. Yeah, and Milkshake's always been fine, as far as I'm concerned.
To the one person last week who was like, "You guys are agreeing too much lately." Dills, I disagree with you so much on this episode. It's ridiculous. You're a crazy person. Just because they're getting a new hero does not mean they're going to be amazing. It's not a sign.
They're going to be fine.
It's not them calling the shot like, "New Rogue hero. Rogue's going to blow your mind."
Listen, people thought Rogue was going to suck this time around. It didn't suck. Rogue has always been fine. Rogue will continue to be fine.
All right, whatever.
It's true. They've been fine. They've been fine forever for the whole game.
They were struggling for a little while there, man.
Nah, people were just sucked at it. People who were good at Miracle were still doing fine. Like I will argue that like Tyler Root and some of those other guys were still like getting really high finishes on ladder with Rogue. People who are good at Rogue. So,
all right.
It's just a hard class. It's a hard class. So when it's not like when Oil Rogue wasn't like as powerful, people were like, I can't do the other thing though. So
yeah, that's a fair enough point. Actually, the one thing I did want to mention is that they said on stream that Auctioneer was on the board. They said it was on their whiteboard as they were figuring out what cards they were going to put in the Hall of Fame and make Wild only. That it was actually up there, but they said it's not. I don't remember the exact quote, but Mike Dene said something to the effect of, "It's not its time yet." Like
sure.
I'm like, I'm filing it away. That means it might still go in. And they also said that they're not done. They're more than willing to be open to add more cards to the Hall of Fame. And of course,
the Hall of Fame now exists, right? So now it's like a tool that's just in their toolbox. Whenever they feel like they need to, they can use it. So.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm certain we will see mostly classic and basic cards being the ones thrown in the Hall of Fame. I think I would be very surprised if we saw something that was supposed to be around for a full 2 years of standard to go into the Hall of Fame early, but it's there.
Yeah, most likely those will
option.
just get nerfed, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I don't think we'll see anything from other expansions going into the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame very much feels like it's meant for classic cards. And they did also say one thing that I wanted to point out is that new classic cards are not actually going to be created, or very unlikely to be created, because they're losing out on a few cards. Like, so basically, like now the three classes that are losing cards, so Rogue, Warlock, and Mage, aren't going to get an extra card to combat that, really.
But they did discuss it. He said like Shatter
yeah.
could be a card that would move into Classic because it's not going to shift the power levels in a huge way, and it is kind of an interesting card that does like showcase what Mage can do, right? It's like Mage likes to freeze stuff. Here's a card that works with that. So
except not that much anymore in Standard because Ice Lance is gone.
Yeah.
But they're basically but they're not going to like directly replace any of those cards, because the whole idea of them using the Hall of Fame as a tool is to make sure that the classic cards and the classic set isn't too oppressive and isn't taking up too many slots in people's decks. Like if you're having decks that are made up of 20 or more classic cards, then those aren't going to change very much with the standard rotation. So they're using the Hall of Fame to try to make those decks change. Sure. So then placing cards into the classic set is very counterintuitive to that goal. So yeah, don't look for that to be a thing, but yeah. So I thought that was
I wouldn't mind seeing it though.
Point.
I think use all the tools available to you, right? And one of those tools could be shifting cards that are really healthy for the game into the classic set when they make sense, right? Right now, there just might not be anything that totally makes sense to do.
Yeah.
But I think that's also another, it's just like use all the tools available, right? Now Hall of Fame, that's another tool they could use. It's great. I think Gadget Stand Auctioneer going in eventually does make sense because it is like the ultimate engine, like the ultimate card draw engine that exists in the game. So if you wanted to design a new one and shift the game in a big way, you can't really design it if that one exists and now has to be better than it in some way. So, it might make sense to get rid of that one or move that into Wild, so then you can create something different in Standard where people will cycle through their deck with some other mechanic, right? Or you can offer a different way, like every time you play a Death Rattle card, you draw a card, something like that. But right now, it's like the best card draw engine that exists. So you will always have to make the next one as good or better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I like the dev insights. Like I said, I don't think a lot of new was said. I think it was mostly just clarification. But again, I'm still really enjoying the fact that they're like, yeah, we're not sure. We're thinking this. We're thinking possibly that. We'll see. Which I think were the first words out of Ben Brode's mouth when asked if they were considering adding new cards into Classic. And I think the first thing he said was, "We're not sure. We could. Probably unlikely, but we could." So I like not ruling things out.
People in chat are bringing up the other thing, too. There's been a lot of chatter about, because somebody asked about Molten Giant and unnerfing it and then moving it into the Hall of Fame, all of a sudden everybody went on this tangent of like, unnerf everything that you previously nerfed and move it all into the Hall of Fame. And I don't think that would be correct. I think there might be a few cards that would make sense to do that with. Maybe like Ancient of Lore or something like that. But I don't want to see Force of Nature come back. I don't want Wild to just turn into this playground of degenerate stuff that used to happen. I want Wild to still be like interesting. Yes, degenerate stuff will happen in Wild, but let's not just like unnerf everything, bring it back, and then all of a sudden like that. You could maybe have like a Tavern Brawl one day where it's like, here's all the unnerfed cards, go. But I think if you have it in an existing meta that lasts forever and ever, it will lose its luster. Like right now, people are missing it because they have these feel-good feelings like, oh, remember that? That was so fun to do.
Nostalgia.
But it wasn't. It was bad for the game, and that's why it got changed. So definitely let's not do that. I think, if anything, it would be fun for like a Tavern Brawl or something, but not for, forever. Let's not just suddenly make it forever. Wild is always going to be like this. So.
I'm with Solid.
I did like the point too that they brought up about combo decks, and just you talking about Force of Nature reminded me basically how they said they like the idea of combo decks, but they want it to be combos in a way that doesn't necessarily mean that you die. So they want combos to be, like things, at least the thing that came to my mind, it was not specifically mentioned on stream, but the thing that came to my mind was like the Aviana Kun, like make a big board kind of decks, where if that's what you're facing, you still have a turn to react. And so it's a big board building combo, or potentially a big card drawing combo. Those kind of combos they think are interesting and good for the game, and I think I tend to agree. The combo decks that they don't like, because they're not very interactive, are the ones that just basically burst you from 20 to 30 health down to nothing all in one turn. So that's the kind of stuff that they're watching and trying to stay away from, but they do like the idea of having multiple combos to do different things in a deck, and I like that idea too. I love the Aviana decks. I think they're really neat. So I would like to see more of those kind of combos built into the game. So it's nice to know that they're not looking to just get rid of all potential combos. They're still building combos, just different ways than straight up damage combos.
Right. Mike Danae even invoked Auctioneer when he was talking about combos. He's like, we've internally considered, Miracle Rogue with Auctioneer and even Druid to some extent to be a combo, and this is the kind of combo we like.
Yeah.
So
I personally don't mind OTK combos. They just need to be complicated and hard to get to, right? That's really the key. And also, they shouldn't be able to do things like 70 damage, right? That's the issue, right? When like that's why Patron was a little bit too ridiculous, is you could combo out to kill somebody who had played perfectly around it. It just didn't matter, right? That's the problem. So the ideal situation for combos is you have them do somewhere between like 20 and like 28 or something, and it takes forever to get there, and you have to kind of make yourself vulnerable during the game by playing weaker cards just to draw, things like that. Like because right now, like the only way at least in certain metas, the only way to combat like these combos was to just play aggro and kill them before they could do it.
Yeah.
So I don't like combos where like control decks just can't ever counterplay it. But I do want I do want big damage combos to exist. They just need to come at a price. And so that as long as that price is correct, it's okay. And that's an okay way to play the game. But I also do really like things like Aviana Kun, that kind of stuff, where you just fill the board. And then you're like, what's up? Can you deal with this? Okay, I win. It's not like I kill you. It's like, here, now you have a chance
You
to
have
respond.
a turn to interact, yeah.
Exactly. But your turn to interact with, like, damage combos is recognizing what they're doing. You know, like things like trying to get out Prophet Velen and then Mind Blast, you know, and like that kind of stuff. You see it coming. You're like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Now let me try to disrupt that, right? Pressure them to the point that they can't take a turn to draw, you know, like they have to just respond to your board, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of back and forth in those types of games. So it's not that I want to see those OTKs go away. They just need to be tempered a little bit, right? And players will always find them. I mean, the meta, like, if they put cards together that can make one happen, the players will find it. So it will always exist in some form, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to spend too much time on these next points so that we can actually still talk about a deck before we get out of here. But Ixar did speak to the size of the team in the past week. He was answering some questions, referring to the balance team. He said that basically there was only 3 to 4 of them, which raised some questions. Someone asked, like, wait, there's only 4 people on the balance team? And Ixar replied with, yes, the design team is around 15 people total. Live content, initial design, system design, final design, and mission design. He later on added UI as well, and he apologized profusely to the UI team for forgetting. He's like, I know I would forget somebody, which we all do. But he said, you know, they also have Ben that directs the ship and is another sort of jack of all trades designer that works on a lot of new player experience, matchmaking, and flavor things. He said, that said, we all help each other out quite a bit, and the real list of things each individual person does is more like 20 bullet points rather than 2, but that's the general gist. So, yeah, that's a still very modest-sized team.
It is, but I feel like it's large enough. I think really the thing, I don't think the issue with balance is the team's not big enough. I think the issue with balance is just the reluctance to pull the trigger sometimes on things. Like,
well, yeah, and
so,
the more,
if anything, I'd rather just be more aggressive with it, right?
Well, and
be more aggressive with the decisions.
Ben talked about it. He brought it up again. I think this is like the 3rd time he's mentioned it on the Dev Insights today, is that they're working on a way to push updates to the game without having to actually have a patch, because that's one of the things that really holds them back. They mentioned more frequent nerfs multiple times on the stream today, and Ben kept tying it back into that. He's like, listen, we're working on it. We hear you. Expect more iteration, but a lot of it is, it seems, hung up on the fact that they can't update as smoothly as they would like.
Sure. I think a lot of people think that the game, like, they literally just, like, log into, you know, dev.com, and then they're like, change this integer to a 1, and then it just happens, right? And that's not how programming works. It's not how video games work. So, like, there's a lot of misplaced anger where people, I mean, we even had a comment on one of our YouTube videos about it, like, oh, lol, Blizzard just tried to get all the money. And it's like, dude, programming, it's a thing. It takes time, and if they can improve their system, then it will happen faster, right? So, I think a lot of people are just they don't understand really what the issue is, and then they just make assumptions, right? They assume it's got to be because there's only 4 people on the design team or the balance team, right? And not that the real world things take time,
right?
So,
And it's one of the things like I completely disagree with that. It's all about the money, rah, 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 rah. Like. Maybe I think there's a question of is like corporate Blizzard and Activision giving the team enough money for enough bodies? I'm not even sure more bodies would fix this problem. But maybe that is the question. I guarantee you we'll never get the answer to it. But yeah, that's the kind of thing you don't talk about publicly.
The answer, though, is there's just more gray area than black and white, which, you know, that's the one thing that frustrates me when I read comments.
It's black and white. Shut up, Dills. It's black and white.
Everybody assumes it's always this and not, you know, not like a combination of factors that mean that you have to think things through and blah, 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 blah. Like, they just assume that there's no texture and nuance to any of this. It's literally just Ben Brode sucks. That's why. You know, and you're like, dude, No, stop it.
Ben
You're not
Brode,
contributing right now.
Ben Brode gets in front of the camera and a microphone and a keyboard and talks to you voluntarily.
Yeah.
That's the only reason
doesn't
he
have
is
to
the
do
target
that,
of
yeah.
your ire. Be nice to the man, damn it. Leave Ben Brode alone. He's a very nice man. He's a very, very nice man. Anyways, we already talked quite a bit about combo decks, but if you would like to hear Max McCall or read Max McCall talking specifically about combo decks, whether they are good, whether they are bad, what type of combo decks that Team 5 actually prefer versus what they like to push back against, he has been unleashed upon the forums again, dropping mad knowledge bombs and mad insights into how Team 5 develops Hearthstone. So if you don't remember, we had never really heard of Max McCall up until a couple of weeks ago when he made a post about the state of Shaman. And, well, he's at it again. So head on over to the official forums. If you haven't read this already, we have a link in the show notes. And then finally, guys, biggest news this week. Druid of the Claws finally getting new card text.
Finally.
I hope this is the beginning of many cards getting. They have made a couple of changes in the past. They changed, what was it, the Ethereal Peddler or something like that. Got to change as well. There's a lot of cards that could use a little slight tweaking to the language so that a player can read it and go, oh, that's how it works. Okay, got it. Rather than having to play it a bunch of times. So, yeah.
Yep. Glad to see that.
This one, I mean, at this point, I was like, if it could never happen, I'd be fine with it. But I think, it's good to be fixing, especially the cards in the classic set, because they're always going to be there. So.
Yes. Exactly. Now, let's talk about Dragon Priest and wrap this episode up.
Hit it very hard.
Wanna blow something up? Time to pay!
Hit it very hard.
Why is it playing again? It played 2 times. Why did it play 2 times? I don't do well when things don't do what I tell them to. Anyways, thank you, Windows 10. Strategy this week and this entire episode is brought to you, as always, by our patrons over at patreon.com/TAC. Thank you all so much for supporting this here podcast. We hit our new goal, so we will be doing 2 triple-headed chicken streams a month.
Woo!
And as a matter of fact, the deck we're about to talk about, Dragon Priest, you can see us playing. I believe 7 games. If you head on over to youtube.com/YayMoveTV right now and look up triple-headed chicken, Dragon Priest. We did not name our deck : anyways, this week we wanted to thank the following patrons. Thank you to Matthew H, Ian L, Lel GBG. What is that name?
They're just trying to mess with you now.
Ben Cooper, Zihong C, Lady Chaos, Craig L, and Timothy O. Thank you all so much for the support, and thank you, patrons, again, for helping us reach our latest goal. Now, Dragon Priest. To reiterate kind of what you brought up, Dills, some cards are getting nerfed soon, but they haven't been nerfed yet. This Dragon Priest deck is very, very targeted at the current state of the meta.
Yeah, so the reason why Dragon Priest made a lot of sense is because you can build it, and this build here in particular is very much built to combat aggro, pirates in particular, right? So if you'll notice, there's a few differences than you'll normally see, and there's a couple things I want to explain, and you can agree or disagree with these things if you want to. Like one of the things I'll point out right away is the fact that we're using Excavated Evil instead of Holy Nova. And a lot of people might say, but dude, you're Dragon Priest, you always have stuff on the board, and why do you want to hurt your own stuff? And the answer to that really is just that in a lot of cases, you don't have stuff on the board, and Holy Nova doesn't kill the stuff that they have on the board. And because once you get to like turn 5, 6, whatever, Pirate Warriors are playing things with 3 health and stuff, things with 4 health in a lot of cases as well. So
a lot of
Holy Nova just doesn't do enough.
Well, the other side of that was actually during our stream, we had multiple people asking, why aren't you using Dragonfire Potion? And
Sure.
The answer is, well, 6 mana, it's too late at that point, usually.
Yeah. It comes out a turn too late, and by that time you haven't stabilized yet. So you need, like, Excavate Evil is not the perfect solution here. I would definitely say it is, like, not the ideal tool, but it is the best available tool right now to Priest, I think, to deal with the issues that you run into, the common issues that you're going to run into. Now, the other thing you're going to notice is there's There's no Healy Priest guy to draw cards, right? That just doesn't exist in this deck.
Northshire Cleric?
And yes, cleric.
I like Healy Priest.
You know what I
guys,
mean, Healy
since
Priest
the
guy.
cleric is a girl, so I love Healy Priest
Sure.
guys.
Okay. Yes.
I love that
Very
Garrett
specific
even
here.
knew who you were talking about.
Northshire
you know
Cleric.
you've been podcasting with someone too long when.
Yep. Apparently, I'm doing the show with Twitch chat today. I'm getting called out left and right. So the cleric is not there because again we're trying to combat aggro decks here. So the problem there is that you don't have time against Pirate Warrior to spend 2 mana to heal a guy on your board and draw a card. You're just dead. Like when you start doing that, you die. So that card is just gone because it just doesn't do enough. And plus, you kind of just play on curve. So card draw is a lot less important in a deck that spends all of its mana each turn on, tempo, right? Like this deck, every turn you're playing, like turn 4, I play something that costs 4, right? Turn 5, I play something that costs 5. Like I don't have 2 extra floating mana very often that I could just use to draw a card, right? So it's just less important in a deck like this that utilizes its mana really well anyway to have this like extra mana doesn't really exist in this deck. So
Yeah, that was the other thing I noticed. I mean, obviously it's draw dependent, right? Because you're not always going to have the perfect cards. But for the most part, if you're drawing well, if you're playing well, if you're playing on curve, the point at which it gets a little hairy and I would like to draw more cards is typically around turn 5 when I can slap down an Azure Drake.
sure.
And if it gets really hairy in the
that's
late
very
game,
true. Is that turn 5 Azure Drake comes out? That's enough cycle most of the time. You also have Power Word Shield, so you still do
yeah, but
cycle a decent amount.
yeah, but you have 2 Nether Spite Historians, you have 2 Draconid Operatives, and in here it is also a Bran. I'm not saying you should hold on to those cards to combo with Bran, but very frequently one of these gets comboed with him.
Absolutely, and you look at those cards and you do have to think of them as card draw essentially, right? So even though they're not drawing into your deck, they're drawing resources. They're giving you more resources and more things to do. And the beauty of the Discover mechanic is that another thing you might look at this deck and be like, where's your late game? Well, Nether Spite Historian just takes care of that. We had a game where we played 2 Ysera's, right? I mean, you might look and say there's no late game. No, this deck has plenty of late game, plenty of juice to beat control decks because you can just find the tools you need. And a lot like you said, the Bran is such a fantastic way to there's so many cards in this deck that benefits so well from Bran, and you have so many ways to protect Bran. Like we had, I think, multiple games where Bran lived 3 or 4 turns, which generally doesn't happen with Bran, right?
If you get Cabal Talon Priest onto Bran with the double battle cry, and then anything else happens to Bran, he's going nowhere unless you're in a mirror matchup and they have Shadow Word Pain.
Oh yeah, if you can do this on turn 6, if you can play Bran and Cabal Talon Priest, just do it because you make a 2/10 Bran. And then you just never lose Bran. He just sticks around forever and ever. They literally have to have hard removal to get rid of him, like non-damage based hard removal. And not that many decks are running that much of that these days.
No, it's mirror match and it's a mid-range shaman that you really need to watch out for with Hex. But even if they use the Hex, there's 2 Hexes in that deck, and guess what? You've got a bunch of dragons that are knocking their teeth out.
Yeah. And the Reno decks, have 1 Blast Crystal and 1 Siphon and 1 Polymorph, in the Mage. They just don't have this. It's very unlikely that they'll be able to deal with it. And then you just get so much value. And now the last really big thing that I want to talk about in this deck is the double Defender of Argus. And this is really the key that kind of makes this deck go, I think, is Dragon Priest has always had this issue where they have all these minions with lots of health, but awkward amounts of attack, right? So you have like a 3/6, you have a 2/4, you have 3/4s, you have all these minions that they can live, but then you're staring down like a 4/4, and your 3/6 has to hit it twice, and it ends up trading evenly. So Defender kind of fixes that issue for you by allowing those awkward turns to suddenly be less awkward, right? Now you can suddenly get that 1 extra damage you needed rather than say attacking and Blackwing Corruptoring and spending 6 damage to kill something with 4 health, right? You suddenly now just can Defender and cleanly take care of issues that always were a problem. And the other, of course, benefit is that taunts are really good against pirates, and you get 2 taunts, and you generally have minions on the board because your minions have a lot of health, right? So,
and if you're playing against aggro, they're not clearing.
They're
your
not
minions,
killing.
so
Them. Yeah, exactly. So suddenly you just put up a wall, and that just like gets you insta wins against them. So I think definitely give it a shot if you're finding yourself having problems with pirates right now. They're going to be here for at least another week. This is a great answer to it. It's basically just designed to beat Pirate Warrior. I think my win rate against Pirate Warrior with this particular deck is like 85%. It's crazy how good the matchup is.
It's very strong. I mean, the downside really is that it's so draw dependent. You need a dragon. Like if you don't have a dragon in hand, there's a lot of the plays feel real bad. Also, if you just draw your curve backwards, it's game over for the most part. But
sure. And definitely you can tweak this deck the way you like. I mean, I don't mind you running Dragonfire or Holy Nova if you think those are better. This version I used Excavated just because that was my problem. Was on turn 5, Holy Nova wasn't killing anything, and on turn 6 it was too late. So I just but you might have a different experience than we did. And I think the core of the deck is really the double defender and the dragon package, and then the single ooze. Those are the really important cards. Outside of that, you can make your judgment calls on the other things. Like the single bookworm, you could go for 2 of those too if you feel like it. There's all sorts of stuff you can do, little tweaks, and the deck will still be very effective. So the core package of it, I think, is really just based on like the brand, all the dragons, and then of course the double defender. That's really the important stuff here.
Well, and I think too with the excavated evil pick, the thing that I've been finding at least is that because of Reno and Reno coming down on turn 6 or sometimes coin on turn 5, a lot of the aggro decks are just going crazy super as much power as they can possibly get out in the first like 4 turns. So
Sure.
you, in some cases with this deck, you're not going to make it to turn 6. Like you really need that 3 damage on turn 5 just to get rid of all their crap. Because it's just like they are aiming now to kill you turn
Before
4 or
Reno,
turn 5 before Reno. So in order to, like you may not make it to turn 6. And even if you do, 1 Dragonfire potion may not be enough to save you. So you might have just taken that 1 extra turn's worth of damage, which could be 10, 12, 15 damage, depending on, how buffed that Pirate Warrior's weapon gets.
Sure.
And, like that might be the difference between you winning and losing the game. So it seems like it's only 1 turn, but I think it's actually really significant to get it that 1 turn earlier.
Yeah, I'm glad
I want
you
to
brought
address
up.
somebody in chat who said that you should run Entomb. I 100% disagree in this meta to run Entomb. If the meta is slower, sure. But the problem with Entomb is it's a dead card against aggro, an absolutely dead card against aggro. Whereas Shadow or Death still does have some applications against aggro. Costs too much. The card goes into your deck. You don't get to use it. And this deck does fine against control because the Dragonhead Operative and the Netherspite Historian give you plenty of juice to beat control decks. So Entomb is not necessary at all.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think
If the
personally,
meta slows down, Entomb's a great card again.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, if all you're going up against is like mid-range shaman and Reno lock, like okay, throw it in there, have a blast. But I bet you, if you have my luck, the second you put it in there, you're gonna stop seeing those decks, and it's gonna be pirate bonanza all over again. So
yeah, but like we used Shadow or Death on Frothing Berserkers like several times. I mean,
tons.
That's the card that like sometimes it just grows out of control, and you're like, thank God.
Yeah,
because Death here.
Because Joss Stills, you have Frothing Berserker. You're playing against a priest. What is the first thing you do? You get that attack to 4 so they can't deal with it. What do? I intentionally make it slightly bigger, and I just Shadow or Death it because it's a Pirate Warrior. What else do they have in there that I'm using that card on?
Yep, absolutely. And right now there is a decent amount of the Dragon Warrior running around as well, so the deaths are really, really good in that, and then tombs again too slow. Like you can death those 9/9s, right? But if you entomb them, that's all you did that turn. Death is 3 mana, it allows you to like play a minion, heal face, do whatever in the exact same turn you played it. So
yep,
more versatile.
Yep,
indeed. I love this deck. I absolutely love this deck. Dragon Priest, I think, is now the archetype I'm the most concerned about in my love for the archetype once the next standard rotation happens, because we're losing a lot of these early game dragon bits, but we'll see what happens. Change is good. I welcome it. welcome it with open arms, even if I have to change what decks I'm playing. So I believe that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We had only planned on one email. We already read that email earlier because we knew we were going to spend probably the first hour of the show in news, which is exactly what happened. But you can keep those emails coming, everyone. It's tacpodcast, tacpodcast@gmail.com. Keep them coming. We appreciate them. Thank you again, patrons. Really appreciate it, everyone. Patreon.com/TAC is the best place to go if you want to support the Angry Chicken. And other than that, you can always find more about this show and the show notes over at amove.tv. The entire back catalog of episodes can be found over at youtube.com/amovetv. Huge thanks to our Patreon producers, Declan H. and Peter Williams. We have swag that you can purchase. We have shirts over at shirts.amove.tv. We have custom etched glassware, which is always hard to say, over at etched.amove.tv. Our Twitter is at TAC Podcast, and you can catch us live every Tuesday night at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here at twitch.tv/amovetv. Other than that, hey, Dills, you're doing other stuff. Where can folks find you?
So the biggest thing I want to point to right now is that if you tune into my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/WillieDillsSF, throughout the weeks, I will be casting games of Dill's Hearthstone League plays. We were doing like featured matches, but now I'm just having people volunteer. So there might be a lot of them. It's really fun. It's giving me a chance to practice my casting. So you'll be able to see like actual matches, people going back and forth, playing best of threes with a band and all that kind of stuff. And I'll be doing the casting. I'd love to have either of you guys come on and do some casting with me if you have time.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's really hard by yourself.
Can I be a unicorn? That's my only stipulation.
It's really hard to cast by yourself, but it's really good practice, I think. Like I've noticed that like at the end of the match, I was just so tired from trying to keep up with everything and make sure I'm explaining stuff and talking. And Gary, you probably know, doing like a solo podcast, like at the end, you're just like, man, I was just yapping for a while there.
Yep.
So, but it's really fun. It's really enjoyable. And I know that some of the people who are playing in the league really enjoy going back and being able to see their matches cast and all that kind of stuff. So just check out my channel. They'll be happening kind of whenever. But should be a lot of them this week and the next 8 weeks to come. So twitch.tv/WillieDillsSF.
Awesome. Jocelyn, where can folks find you, even if you aren't wearing a unicorn onesie?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at JossPlays. You can find links to everything I do at jossplays.com. And I want to remind everybody to check out my general gaming podcast on Wednesday nights right here on twitch.tv/amovetv. It's called The Gamers In. We have a lot of super cool stuff coming out in the next month or so. We've got Horizon Zero Dawn. We've got, obviously, Nintendo Switch is launching, as well as the next installment in the Mass Effect series. So we have a lot of really cool things to talk about in the next 4 weeks or so.
Awesome. Folks, you can find me on Twitter at Garrett Art. Normally, I'd pimp my other shows, but the thing I really want to pimp this week is the Heroes Charity Brawl. This is a Heroes of the Storm themed charity stream that will be happening this Saturday. My podcast, Into the Nexus, is taking place in it, as well as Core, Lords of the Storm, Hotscast, and Heroes Power Hour. We are all getting together, 10 Heroes of the Storm podcasters, to beat the living snot out of each other to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. If you want to support this, if you want more information, including the schedule and exactly which one of us are all going to be there, head on over to heroescharitybrawl.com. And we really appreciate the support, everyone. It's going to a good cause. So go and check it out. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you again to Uniregistry for sponsoring it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for letting us yell our opinions at the top of our lungs at you. We want change, damn it. We want it now, and we want it always. Until next time, job's done.
Job's done.
Job's done.
Yes!